We continue now at the top of Daf Kuf Tesam and Beis Mesechet Yevamos. This is Yevamos Daf 109b. The Gemara says, V'yomer Rabbi Avo, and Rabbi Avo says, Asya Redifa Redifa. We can make a Gezer Shava, Redifa Redifa, in terms of someone who brings peace. Ksiv Hacha, it says over here, Bakesh Shalom V'radfeyu. That's the pasuk we quoted before about seeking peace, and it uses the word V'radfeyu. Ksiv Hasam, and it says over there, Rodev Tzedakah V'chesed Yimtza Chayim Tzedakah V'chavod. Rashi over here explains, Asya Redifa Redifa, Tashlam Schar Gadol Havashal. And the point over here is that there's a great reward for somebody who brings peace. Shocha Perosen Bolam Hazav Akern Kayemes Lo Olam Haba. He gets the fruits in this world, and the principle remains for him in the world to come. Kegamilas Chasadim. We're bringing the other pasuk to show that it's compared to Gamilas Chasadim D'chsibu, where it says by Gamilas Chasadim Yimtza Chayim Tzedakah Bolam Haba. V'chavod Bolam Haza. You're going to get things in Olam Haba and Olam Haza as well. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, B'hafaras Nedarim. Again, we said that one of the things that is positive is Hafaras Nedarim, the annulment of vows. Rabbi Nosson, and the Gemara says that follows what Rabbi Nosson says. The Tanya, as we learned in the Brayso, Rabbi Nosson, Rabbi Nosson says, Hanoder ki'ilu bona bama. If somebody makes a neder, makes an oath, so it's like building a bama. V'hamekayimo ki'ilu hikriv ala carbon. Somebody that is mekayim, that sustains, that upholds that neder, is like somebody who brings upon the bama a carbon. As Rashi over here says, ki'ilu bona bama b'shas isra bamas is a bad thing. It's like building an altar, a bama, at the time when you're not allowed to have bamas. T'choteyu, that's a sin. D'chsiv v'chisech dal lindor halo sech dal yeh b'chachet. It says it's going to be a sin in such a situation. Ki'ilu hikriv carbon. Then if you uphold, you maintain such a neder, that's like bring a carbon. Shavar alav shtei averos. That's like two averos. Elayelech etzel chacham. Rather, what the person should do is go to a chacham v'yatirenu and undo the neder kedei shelo yehei ragel b'kach, in order that he doesn't become accustomed to making nedarim. And the Gemara continues, V'yisrachik mishlosha devarim. A person should distance himself from three things. Number one, min ha-miyunin, from a miyun. Why? Because dilma godlo mechartaba. It's talking about the girl. She might end up doing miyun, and then she'll grow up and she'll regret that she did the miyun. She really should have stayed married to this individual. Min ha-pekdonos, and a person should also distance himself from taking deposits. Bebar mosa debaise ki baise dam. We're talking about a situation where the person he takes the deposit from lives in the same city, and he's going to treat his house like his house. And so we're afraid that the person's going to just come into his house, he'll take back his things. As Rashi over here says, the baisik, he baisik dami sharogel etzlo, he's buying a lot, v'yitel es shalo, then maybe he'll take back what he owns, v'yachzer v'yitvenu, and then he'll go claim it, he'll claim that the person still has the deposit and he owes it to him. So in other words, the person's going to be stolen from by accepting this deposit. Again, baisik, he baisik dami, he'll treat his house like his house, and minhei ravon, and from being a guarantor. What's the problem with being a guarantor? Ba'arve shaltzion. We're talking about the guarantors of Shaltzion. Rashi over here says Shaltzion Shem Makom, that's the name of a place. Shamanichan Halova V'Tovsin Arev. In Shaltzion, what they would do is they wouldn't even bother going to the borrower; they would go straight to the Arev, even if the borrower did not default on the loan. Lishna Achrina Shaltzion Korin Shem Ravon. Shaltzion might not be the name of a place. Rashi says it might actually be the name of this particular kind of guarantor. Al Shem No Trikon Shlof Dot Sholef Atzma Min Halova V'Tokei Atzma La Arev. The person slips away, so to speak, from the borrower, doesn't even bother collecting from the borrower, and instead he goes straight to the guarantor, as the Gemara over here says. Again, ba'arve shaltzion do am Rabbi Yitzchak, because Rabbi Yitzchak says, "Ma'id dechsiv." What does the pasuk mean when it says "Raya roa ki orev zar roa achara"? The pasuk here is talking about bad, an evil upon an evil, talking about an orev, talking about a situation again of a guarantor, of a stranger. It means to say roa achara tavo lemekable gerim. There should be evil upon evil that comes upon those who accept gerim. It's not good to accept converts. Ula arve shaltzion, and also to this exact case that we're talking about, the arve shaltzion. And also somebody who inserts himself into Dvar Halacha or confounds himself into Dvar Halacha, and that we'll discuss in a moment. The Gemara addresses all three things. Mekable Gerim, what's so bad about accepting converts? Kerebi Chelbo, that's like what Rabbi Chelbo says. The Amar Rabbi Chelbo, because Rabbi Chelbo says, Kashim Gerim li Yisrael kesapachas ba'or. Gerim, when it comes to converts, they are difficult to Klal Yisrael. Like let's say you have a sapachas, like a kind of a leprosy that is on the skin. Rashi over here says, Kashim Gerim Shem Bekiin B'diktukei Mitzvahs. In other words, they're not experts when it comes to the mitzvahs. Ulemeidin Yisrael Mimaasein, and then Jews learn from them. Rashi over here earlier says Uletokei Atzmo Sefer Dekra. That's actually the end of this very same pasuk. So we're explaining the whole pasuk. The earlier part again, Raya Roa Roach Hara Ki Orev Zar Hama'arev Zorim Gerim B'Yisrael. One way of understanding, the person mixes these Gerim into Klal Yisrael. V'hanichnas be'eravonami mashma, but it also implies a situation of a guarantor. And then again, again, the end of the pasuk talking about Tokei Atzmo Lidvar Halacha, Shomer Hareini Shone Ve'eini Mekayim, as we're about to explain. Somebody who says, I'm going to learn, but I'm not going to fulfill the Torah. V'akabel Schar Limud, I just want to get the reward for learning, but I don't want to actually fulfill the halacha. So that's Tokei Atzmo Lidvar Halacha. So again, Gerim are difficult, Kisapachas Ba'or, like the leprosy. Arve Shel Tzion, Da'avdi Shlof Dots, the Arve Shel Tzion, that's exactly what Rashi quoted before, that they go away, they move away from the actual Barur, and instead they follow after the Yorev in order to collect the money. And Tokeya Atzmo Lidvar Halacha, what does it mean, Tokeya Atzmo Lidvar Halacha? The Tanya, as we learned in a Braisa, Rabbi Yossi says, Kol Omer ein lo Torah, ein lo Torah. Anybody who says that he doesn't have Torah, that person has no Torah. The Gemara says, Pshita, that's obvious. That's not even a chiddush. Rashi over here says, Ein no osik b'Torah. If he says, I don't want to learn Torah, Ein mekabel schar limud, then he ain't lo Torah. He's not going to get the reward for learning. So that's too obvious. In other words, obviously, if a person says he's not going to learn, he's not going to get the reward for learning. Ela kol omer ein lo ela Torah, ein lo ela Torah. So then the Gemara changes it to somebody who says, I only want Torah and not to do the mitzvahs. He's only going to get the reward for the Torah and not for actually fulfilling the Torah. And the Gemara says, Hanami Pshita, isn't that also obvious? Again, if the person says he's only going to learn Torah, so he's only going to get the reward for Torah. And so the Gemara says, Elada filu Torah einla. What it really means is somebody who only wants Torah and not to actually fulfill the halacha, he's not even going to get the reward for the Torah. My time, what's the reason? Amar Papa says, Amar Kra, because the pasuk says, V'limadatem v'asisem, it talks about learning and doing. Kol sheyeshno b'asiya yeshno b'lamida. If the person is doing, then he'll also be part of the learning. Kol she'eno b'asiya eno b'lamida. But if a person isn't fulfilling the Torah, then he won't get any credit for the learning of the Torah. V'bayisem, if you want to, could say, Liolam kedam risu meikar. We can actually say the original way we said it. Kol ha'omer ein lo ela Torah, ein lo ela Torah. If somebody says they're only going to learn Torah, they're only going to get the reward for Torah, which seems so obvious, but it's not obvious. Lo no tzrich, it's needed. To come migmar la'achrini, because what's going on is he's teaching other people Torah. V'azli v'avdi, and those people actually fulfill the Torah. So ma'odetema isle agro l'didei. So one might think that he gets the reward of their performance of the mitzvos kamash mala. No, it comes to teach us that he only gets the reward for learning, but not for the fulfilling that the students do. V'bayisem, and if you want, I could say another explanation, Tokeya Atzmo Lidvar Halacha. What does it mean? Tokeya Atzmo Lidvar Halacha. It means Bedaina Da'asi Dina Lakamei. It means there's a judge and a case comes before him. The Gomer Halacha Medami Milsa Lamilsa, and he learns the Halacha, and then he starts comparing one to the other. As Rashi over here says, V'Gomer Halacha Yodei Halacha She'in Dom L'Din Habalafan. If he knows the Halacha that's Kol Kach, it's not so similar to this particular case. Umedami Milsa Lamilsa, he just compares the two. V'lo Masha L'Rabbi, he doesn't follow up to ask his Rebbe. V'Hainu Tokeya Shesomech He's relying on the halachas that he knows, even though it's not exactly the same case. So that's what it means over here. V'gomer halacha medami milsa lamilsa. He compares one to the other when they're comparable. V'islei rabbi v'lo azal mashal. And he has a rebbe. He doesn't go and ask his rebbe what the halacha is. Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani Amar Rabbi Yonasan, because Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani says the name of Rabbi Yonasan. Liolam yira dayan atzmo ki l'cherem munachas lo bein yirei chosav. A judge should view it as if there's a sword between his thighs. V'gehenim psuchol mitachtov, and as if there's gehenim opened up underneath him. In other words, a person has to be extra careful when issuing a halachic psak. Shenema, like the pasuk says, Hinei mitaso shelo shishim giborim saviv la mi gibore Yisrael mi pachad baleilos. Talks about the fact that there were mighty men surrounding because of the fear of the night. What is the fear of the night? Mi pachad shel gehenim. It really means the fear of gehenim. Shedom melalayla, which is similar to the night. In other words, again, this idea the dayan should fear that he's going to give a bad judgment and should be extra careful in this regard. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Rabbi Gamliel said, if she does a refusal, this was the case of a situation of two sisters. So if the sister that's a minor refuses the marriage, then the other sister is allowed to do yibum. You have no problem of achosisha. But otherwise, what you do is if she doesn't do me and you wait till she becomes an adult, then when she becomes an adult, that marriage will become a doraisa marriage, and automatically the sister will be exempt from yibum because it's achosisha. So the Gemara says, Boy minei Rabbi Elazar mei Rav. Rabbi Elazar asked the following question from Rav. My time at Rabbi Gamliel, what's the reason of Rabbi Gamliel? Is it Misham Dekasavar Kiddushay Ketana Mislatalu? Is it because he holds the Kiddushin of a minor is just hanging and waiting? V'chi Godla Godli Bahada, and when she becomes an adult, automatically it becomes a real Kiddushin, Afagav Delo Baal, even though there's no act of relations, automatically that Kiddushin becomes a real Kiddushin. Rashi over here says, my time at Rabbi Gamliel, Do Amar Keshatagdel Zu Teitzei Zu B'Velo Klum. Why does Rabbi Gamliel say when she becomes an adult, the other one has no Yibum? Godli Bahada, V'Afagav Delo Baal. adult, and niktasha hashta, there's going to be an automatic kiddushin. Mikam makom mishagadla tafsa kiddushin meikar. What happens is that when she becomes an adult, that original kiddushin takes effect. Vigli milsa lamafreya dezeka dachlav klumu. When we say retroactively, the bond of yibum that existed is really nothing. That's one possibility in terms of what Rabbi Gamliel says. When she grows up, so then again the kiddushin will take effect retroactively, afagav de lo bal, even with no active relations. Odilmor maybe mishum dekasavar mekadesh achos yevama niftera yevama v'halchala. Maybe he holds that let's say you have a situation where you have a yevama, she's awaiting yibum, and then even after that yibum, that bond exists, so to speak, that the husband, the brother over there, ends up being mekadesh her sister. So maybe even if it's done, even if that kiddushin to the sister happens after the yevama is awaiting the yevama is then going to be pater, and so therefore ibalini lo baalo, and therefore it depends on the act of relations. If he has relations with this girl when she grows up and she becomes an adult, his wife, when he has relations with her, that's what undoes the yibum. But if not, if there's no relations, it doesn't undo the yibum. Rashi says, Odilma kiddushin kamay lo klum ninu. The original kiddushin is actually nothing. Umisham kiddushin to be ila, to misha godla nafkach yibum, and it's really only when they have relations, when this girl becomes an adult, that undoes the yibum. V'afagav de zeka kodemis lekiddushin. Now, even though the zeka, the bond of yibum, happened before that kiddushin, that act of bia, kasavar mekadesh achos yevama niftera yevama. We say no. Even if the kiddushin to the sister comes after the yevama is ready for yibum, dasi kiddushay mavatli lezeka. The kiddushin can come along and it can nullify that zeka, that bond of yibum that exists. So that was the question that Rabbi Elazar asked Rav. What exactly is the pshat in Rabbi Gamliel? Is there a requirement of bia or not? Amar Lei, so he said to him, Hainu time to Rabbi Gamliel. The reason of Rabbi Gamliel is Mishum Dekasavar HaMekadesh Achos Yevama Niftera Yevama V'Halchala. The reason is because he holds if you do a kiddushin with the sister of a Yevama, the yibum is done. Iboalin ilo balo. Therefore, if there is an act of relations, that would exempt the yibum. Otherwise, not. And the Gemara continues. Amar Rav Sheshes says, Amina kinayim v'shachiv Rav. Amar lo Shemaita. I think that Rav was saying this when he was drowsy, when he was half asleep, when he said this answer. Titania, because we learned in a brayso, HaMekadesh HaSakatan, it says the opposite. If a person is Mekadesh, a girl that's a minor, Kiddusha Teluyan, that the Kiddushin is Teluyan, it's hanging, meaning it sounds like the other option, that automatically when she becomes an adult, My Teluyan, what does it mean Teluyan? Lav Ki Godla Godli Bada, doesn't it mean to say that as she gets older, the Kiddushin matures, so to speak, and actually takes effect? V'afagav de lo boal, and even though there's no act of relations, it's still going to take effect, not like Rav says. But the Gemara continues, Amar le Rav and Breder of Nachman. Rav and Breder of Nachman said back to Rav Sheshes, you're misunderstanding what this brayso means when it says that the kiddushin of a katana is waiting is provisional. Hamilza de katani mislatalia v'kaimo. When we say that the kiddushin of a katana is provisional, it doesn't mean that automatically when she's an adult it takes effect. Iboalini lo baalo. It actually means that it's provisional in the sense that when there's an act of relations, when she's an adult, that's when there will be a kiddushin. Otherwise, there will not be a kiddushin. And the idea is Da'amr, because she can say until that point in time, Hu adif minoi v'ano adif naminei. He has an advantage over me. He can divorce me with a get. But right now, I can still have an advantage over him. I can refuse the marriage with miyun. And so therefore, it's provisional in that sense that both sides can end the marriage until that act of relations when she's an adult. But the Gemara continues, V'sava Ravi boilini lo ba'alo. But does Rav really say that it depends on this act of bia? Does Rav really say that it's only at that point in time that we say that the marriage takes effect on a doraisa level? V'ha'itmar, but it was learned, Ketana shalom miyano. Let's say you have a case of a Ketana, she doesn't refuse the marriage, V'egdila, and she grows up and she becomes an adult, V'yomda v'nisas, and then she goes ahead and she gets married. Rav Amar ein tzricha get misheni. Rav says she doesn't even need to get from that second husband because the marriage is nothing. She apparently, as we're about to say, it sounds like she's automatically married as an adult. That first marriage takes effect. But Shmuel says, no, it's tzricha get misheni. Just because she grew up and she became an adult doesn't mean that she's automatically married on a doraisa level, and therefore she does require a get from that second husband, and we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Kuf Yud Amud Aleph.